All right, so gentlemen, so today I have a great guest, and the reason I brought Akshay today is to talk a little bit about fear, which is the main culprit of misfortune and sickness of modern men, and especially middle-aged men in the 30s and 40s. So before we go on, what's up, Akshay?
Not much, buddy. Thanks for having me on the show, man. Good to connect with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, I'm glad to connect with you. And for the people audience that is listening, I was telling Akshay before we start this podcast that he is the first human being that pronounces my name correctly outside of Greece. Outside
Outside
of
of
Greece.
Greece, of
So
course.
that's really impressive because I'm connecting with people outside of Greece for years, and
No,
I'm
buddy.
really glad. Oh man. So all right, let's start. So before we start, give us a little bit of your background regarding fear and why you have this fear brand and how come and you are the guy you are right now.
Sure. Yeah, I'll tell you what led to my work with Fearvana and why fear is such a vital component of my brand and ultimately who I am and what I do today. My journey to Fearvana kind of began when I moved to the US at the age of 13. I was born in India, lived all over India, Singapore, moved to the US at 13. And before this, I was terrified of everything, terrified of like roller coasters, terrified of Ferris wheels, let alone roller coasters, really scared of a lot of different things. Now, I moved to 4 different cities, and at the age of 13, when I came to Austin, soon after moving here, probably a couple of years later, I got very heavily into drugs, into alcohol, into this lifestyle of self-destruction. I used to cut myself. I still have these scars on my arm. I used to burn myself. I have scars on my arm from that. And lost 2 friends to drug addiction and was heading down that path myself, like easily could have been me. Until one day when I saw the movie Black Hawk Down. And that movie was the trigger that changed my life. Almost overnight, I stopped doing drugs, and watching that movie was the trigger that made me want to stop that path because it made me question this very selfish and worthless and meaningless existence I was living and wanting to do something more meaningful with this life and live for something greater than myself. When I watch the movie and you see these guys sacrificing their lives for someone greater than themselves or something greater than themselves from someone other than themselves, it triggered something in me that what kind of human being would have that courage? Would I be able to do that? And so almost overnight, stopped doing drugs, decided to join the U.S. Marines. It took me about a year and a half to get in because I have a blood disorder that 2 doctors told me would kill me in boot camp. So I had to sort of fight my way into the Marines, but this was a post 9/11 environment. So, they needed young, dumb kids wanting to go into Marine Corps infantry, and here I was ready to go. So went and joined the Marines, and joining the Marines is when I started to embrace the beauty of fear, the beauty of suffering, the beauty of adversity, because Marine Corps training was hard. It was absolutely brutal. And from there, I started to look for other ways to test myself. I went mountain climbing, cave diving, skydiving, rock climbing. Everything that scared me, heights, tight spaces, all of it, I explored it. I pushed into my fears. I went deeper and deeper into it. And then in 2007, I was deployed to Iraq as an infantry Marine. So one of my jobs in Iraq, among many, one of my jobs was to walk in front of our vehicle convoys looking for bombs before they could be used to kill me and my fellow Marines. So somewhat dangerous job, as you might imagine. Uh,
Yes.
but by this point, I had gotten very intimate with fear. I'd learned to connect and deal with and face fear because of all the things I was doing. So I thrived out there. Struggled, of course. War was not a comforting environment. It was obviously an environment with a lot of adversity. But for the most part, I thrived. Came back from the war, though, and I struggled. I lost a friend to the war, lost a couple of junior Marines to suicide after coming back. And I struggled with being back in the normal world. So I started drinking heavily. And one morning, after just 5 days of binge drinking, I woke up and I was on the verge of slitting my own wrists. And that was kind of rock bottom. I had been diagnosed with PTSD, struggling with depression, with alcoholism. And that moment was the trigger that changed everything once again. It wasn't a smooth climb out of the abyss. It was just this battle to fight out. I slipped back after that, but that was the moment that I would say planted the seed that led to my transformation. I started delving deep into books on neuroscience, psychology, spirituality, taking all my life experience that I'd learned, combining it with this research, and that's what led me to this concept and this ethos of Fearvana, the work that I now do, and ultimately writing a book about it and sharing with other people. Because of course, I'm not the only person who suffered. Every person on earth suffers in some way, and the fundamental ethos of Fearvana is to help people develop a positive relationship to their fear, to their suffering, to their struggle, and use it as an access point to bliss, to enlightenment, to nirvana. Because it's so demonized, right? People hear fear and think of it as something bad. And Fearvana and all my life experiences taught me that the goal is actually the exact opposite, that fear is not the antithesis of nirvana, it's the access point to it. And that's what life experience and research has taught me, and that's the work I now do.
All right, so that's a really impressive bio.
Thank you. It's been a beautiful journey.
Yeah, it's really a journey, and I mean, I can say a lot about war. I don't know war. I don't know about how it is to be, to be there, ready to die, as you were probably. Did that war experience change you? So do you think that the war experience was critical for you to then solve your PTSD, funny enough? So do you think that you being inside that environment helped you a few years later in some kind of way to face other fears, more fears?
For sure. I mean, kind of paradoxically to your point, it was a contributing factor to my symptoms of post-traumatic stress that I dealt with after the war, and yet it gave me strength and taught me lessons that helped me navigate it. I mean, you learn out there so much about the human condition, and that's what, I mean, even to this day, I still seek the extremes. A few weeks ago, I was climbing Denali, the tallest mountain in North America. I run ultra marathons where I run for 24 hours, and I've done these long races, and I seek out suffering at these extremes because war is this experience that you get to taste the absolute edges of the human condition. You see humanity at its absolute worst, people doing horrific things to each other, the atrocities, but you see humanity at its absolute best. People sacrificing their lives for each other and giving and living for something greater than themselves very viscerally and very tangibly on a day-to-day basis. And that was part of the draw to that experience, and that was also the lessons and takeaway from that experience was about once you open that door to experiencing humanity at that level, at the most extremes, it changes you forever. And it can change you in dark ways, which for a time it did, or it can change you in the most profound and beautiful ways, which now it has. And that's ultimately what we do with it. Like any life experience, it's how we choose to take from that life experience that it can shape us into something better or break us into something worse. And that's the choice that we have to make. It's not easy. It's far from easy. There's nothing easy about this journey. But it took me a lot of falls, a lot of failures, a lot of inner work to get to the point that now, I mean, it was being a Marine serving in war. It's one of the most beautiful experiences I've ever been blessed to experience, and obviously it was hard. Obviously it was challenging, but I'm so grateful for it. It allowed me to build myself into something stronger. And that's what adversity does. I mean, you can't know courage unless there is fear. You can't experience courage without fear. So by putting myself in experiences of fear, I allowed myself to train in courage. By experiencing struggle, I was forced to tap into strength. By experiencing pain, I could find my power to overcome that pain. So you need to go into experiences of adversity, experiences of pain, experiences of suffering to find the power that we have within us, within the human spirit, to transcend that pain. And war is one of the most profound examples of that. So I'm forever grateful for that experience, and I couldn't be happier that I got to serve in the Marines and experience humanity at that level. I mean, it's shaped who I am. All of these experiences combined have shaped me into this person that I'm now very proud of, and I love who I am today. And the life experience, I mean, in my 36 years, I've lived multiple lifetimes worth of experiences, and that comes from this adventure of life, man. Like in the adventure of life, you got to go into lows and you got to go into highs. If you don't know the lows, you will never really know the highs. We're not meant to live a static life where we're just numb to the human experience. And if you're not numb to the human experience, you're inevitably going to experience pain. But pain is part of it. Pain is like, there's beauty in pain. There's purity in pain. And you only can appreciate the value of pleasure when you know the power of pain.
It seems to me that life, existence, especially for a male, it's like paradoxical to find pleasure or at least to find happiness, because we, in some case, in some sense, I think we are meant to suffer. And I've seen that with myself also. And I don't mean it, of course, in a bad way, but we are meant for some kind of pain, whether that's going out to, trying to get girls, which is, the simplest form of fear in the modern society. But it is, you go through that, pain, through that rejection and social rejection. Whether that's war, where you go, through pain of loss of friends and of your own injuries, maybe. There's always something that you have to dive into it if you want your life to be meaningful. And I don't know, do you think that rites of passage are something that we are missing here in this modern, society?
Absolutely. Like, we've gotten too fucking soft. Like, there's those rites of passage, they are ways to experience suffering. Like, a great example of this is this Brazilian tribe in Brazil. They call the Sateramawe tribe. What they do is when the kids turn 12, between 12 and the age of 16, they make them wear a glove filled with bullet ants. It's a glove up to here that filled with bullet ants. The bullet ants, they're called bullet ants because they have the highest rating in the Schmidt pain index. It's a pain index to measure pain from animals like bees and ants and things like that. And they're called bullet ants because people have said that being bit by them feels like you've been shot by a gun, hence bullet ants. It's that painful. So these kids have to wear a glove filled with bullet ants from 12 to 16. They do this like, I think 5-10 times, something like that, multiple times, where they're wearing a glove filled with these ants and they're just stinging them over and over and over again. I think they wear it for about 10-12 minutes. And this is a brutal rite of passage, but as the chief of the Sateramawe tribe said, that it's only, I forget exactly his quote, but essentially he says that without a life without suffering is you cannot truly appreciate life. And they go through this to experience the suffering so they can come out on the other side stronger. When you shelter a child, when you shelter a child or a man, anybody, a human being, man, woman, anybody, from experiencing suffering, and parents do this all the time. As an Indian parent, I see this a ton. Indian parents are notoriously bad. I mean, maybe parents all over, but Indians, especially in my experience, notoriously bad about like protecting the shit out of their kids, over spoiling them, and like, oh, they let them not fall. The kid gets stronger when he falls and learns how to get back up. That's how you grow in confidence. You experience adversity and you find something within you to transcend that adversity. That's why rites of passage are meant to be an experience of suffering, because they show you that you have the power within you. It's not just about the suffering. The suffering is the method, but it's not the purpose. The purpose is what the suffering gives you, and the suffering gives you strength to transcend that suffering. That's what it's all about. I mean, when I seek out suffering, like just tomorrow, man, I'm about to do a major ultra tomorrow, and I am going to suffer. I'm going to go into darkness and into hell, into pain as a result of it. I know it. I know it's coming. It's going to be friggin' miserable. But the suffering is the vehicle to get to the thing on the other side of it, which is the transcendence, which is the power, which is the strength. And we need that. And by protecting our kids so much, you're not helping them. You think, oh, I don't want them to suffer. I want to shelter them. And dude, again, I've seen these Indian parents that like, they won't let them fall. They'll have like people, especially if they have money, they'll have 3 maids around these kids to protect them from any sort of struggle. And and that you think you're helping them, but you're not. And I've seen the effect of it. Kids who grow up like that, they don't have any resilience to handle life. The littlest things, and they will break because no shit, they haven't been taught resilience. They haven't been taught how to face suffering and rise from it. That's what rites of passage are. And I mean, for me, I was born into a good life. Like, my parents were great parents, again, Indian parents, so they weren't as bad as as extreme as some other parents I've seen in terms of protecting, but they certainly were like, gave me a good life, and I'm grateful for it. Don't get me wrong. They gave me a great life. They loved me. Couldn't have asked for more. But because I joined the Marines, I learned how to suffer. I learned the beauty of it. If not, like, I would have, God knows where I would have been. Like, if I mean, dude, to be frank, I could live my whole life in comfort and luxury and opulence right now. I have a fair bit of money. My family is well off, but I choose not to. I choose to suffer. I choose to work, because that's where the growth lies. That's where the beauty of the human experience lies, So rites of passage are an essential thing that are missing. I mean, it's the culture, the world, the global culture is getting more and more towards anything that is remotely hard, and that's not helpful. Like, suffering, I mean, dude, I see this all the time, even in like marketing. Like, they'll see these messages like I've heard one person, and he's crazy popular in the online marketing space, and he says the idea that you need hard work to succeed is bullshit. Like, we're demonizing hard work now as a culture. We're demonizing suffering. We're demonizing fear, and that's so fucking stupid. Like, the suffering is the vehicle to transcendence, to self-transcendence, to strength, to power. We can only know that when we go into those spaces. And like I said, I can speak from experience because I've tasted both edges. I know extreme opulence and I know extreme suffering. And I can tell you from having experienced both edges, I will never choose a life without it. Now, this doesn't mean it's only about the suffering. The suffering, like I love my luxuries as well, but the only reason the luxuries are valuable is because I've gone through the other edge. It's contrast that gives life its flavor. So there was a point in my life where I realized I was seeking suffering all the time, and I was like, everything was an act of suffering in life. And I realized it was like too much. I'd gone too far into that one side. But by playing on both edges now, I can find where I fit on that line of suffering and play. And every one of these sort of edges in life, there's so many different edges, right? Ego, humility, contentment, discontentment, life, death, light, dark. By playing on both edges, by playing on all edges, I get to find where I fit on that line, and I get to experience the contrast and the flavor of life at its absolute fullest.
Dude, you know how to talk, first of all. Let me give you that.
Thank you. I do a lot.
Yeah, you know how to inspire. That's one thing. And it's pretty impressive that you have the choice, and you had the choice always to be well off. And that's even more impressive for me, because many people think, that I was one of them back in the day, but that, there is a place, there is a time and a date where your suffering ends, and you reach a point. For some people, for the majority of people, I would say it's probably getting a job. After going to the university. If you are a high school student, you suffer in high school, and then you say, all right, when I go to the college or university, I'm going to be free of trouble, party all the time. But it's not true. You don't party all the time, and trouble will always find you, whether you like it or not. And I've seen the same with me, with my life. I mean, you cannot avoid trouble. That's a problem. Most people have this misconception that, there is a date, a time, an event, a place where everything is going to be all right. And probably if we die when we die at some point, yeah, maybe there is a place. I don't know. But until then, I mean, my experience, and probably yours, you're more qualified to talk about this, is that, there's, you have to expect it. You have to embrace the suck, as I say.
Absolutely. That's one of the biggest causes of human misery I see, is that we think that when I get there, wherever the there is, I make the $1 million, I get the house, I get the relationship, I get the car, then my problems will be over. And the reality is, whether you have $1 billion or you have $0, you're going to suffer. There's going to be problems. We see people with all the money in the world all the time going through struggles, and they take their own life. They struggle with addiction, and it's heartbreaking. But the reality is that everybody experiences problems. And if you wait for your life for the problems to go away, you are setting yourself up for a lifetime of misery, because every time you get to there, the next milestone you reach, and you suddenly are realized, oh wait, there's still more problems, you're just going to be that much more miserable. But the reality in life is there's always problems. And so the way to reframe it is, as I like to always say, is that progress is not the elimination of problems. Progress is the creation of new problems. So always be looking for that problem. Like, every problem is a new opportunity to find a solution. Every solution is a new awakening. It's a new insight. It's a new opportunity for growth. So problems are access points to growth. I'm always looking for a problem to solve. Always. There's always needs to be, because there's, like you said, there's going to be the problem anyway. I mean, if you don't seek out a worthy struggle will find you anyway. So look for one that's worthy of who you are and who you want to be. It doesn't have to be running ultra marathons or climbing mountains or going to Antarctica. That's my worthy struggle. That's my expression of Fearvana. The key thing I like to do with what I teach is to help people find their own version of that. It could be playing chess. It could be raising a child, hosting a podcast, building a business, writing a book, writing a movie, whatever it may be. We all have our vehicle, our path of Fearvana, our worthy struggle, and anything worthwhile pursuing will be hard. You will suffer, but that's what makes it worthwhile, because in the pursuit of that problem, you will find new solutions. So the key is falling in love with the process, not waiting for the result. The result is a side effect of your commitment to the process. We are so focused on the result, like when I get there, I'll be happy, and the culture feeds into that, right? We have this instant gratification machines so everywhere, right? I can get my things on Amazon Prime instantly in one day. So we're constantly looking for things to be instant, to get the results instantly, that we lose sight of the fact that it's about the process that transform you. Like, it's like, as a great example is lottery winners. Lottery winners, they'll win millions of dollars, and they'll almost always, they either lose it rapidly and it doesn't improve their life.
I have to interrupt you. Please. I have a story personal of that. I have a personal story of a lottery
jump
winner.
in.
So let me share, please. So my mom's cousins were army officers. So they're regular dudes in the army doing their job, not getting paid well and stuff. But, they were very, smart in a way, but, good dudes. And at some point they won the lottery. And you can imagine the first thing that they did is to avoid any trouble. They, of course, resigned from the army because, hey, who needs who needs money? Who needs a job? So they resigned and they went away. They bought, a couple of cars, a couple of great homes, villas, or whatever, and they make some foolish investments without knowing anything. Probably they trusted the first person that came by and and told them something. Think of how dumb their decision was. They invested in DVD clubs in the early 2000s. So yeah, with the internet rising, so they invested in DVD clubs. So yeah, not good decision. And one of them didn't marry, but he was, he was spending money here and there for 5 years, going everywhere, top hotels, 5-star hotels, everywhere around the globe. And the other one, he was engaged with a young, very beautiful, I might add, lady, 17 years old she was when I met her. And of course, the lady bought a lot of gifts for her own from the money. And you know the story. It's what you are going to say. It's the same. They basically in less than a decade, they were not even back in their army days. They were worse. They had debt. So yeah. So they weren't prepared for that. They didn't face fears. They didn't face adversity to get that.
Exactly. That story is it's so commonplace, that some version of that story with lottery winners, because it's not about making the money. It's the person you become in the process. So the difference between somebody who's just handed it versus somebody who worked their ass off for it, the result is the same, right? I made it, let's say, and for the sake of the example, $1 million, just throwing out a number. But that's not what it's about. It's about the transformation that happened in the journey. And if you don't suffer, if you don't experience the adversity, if you don't work for it, you're not going to get the benefit of that transformation. And that's where the real beauty lies. The results are just purely a side effect of that. And then you're going to get there and some new problem will show up. And the key thing is embracing the process of that. Embracing the process of one systematically overcoming one problem at a time to build up the skills in whatever your craft is, whatever your arena is, and systematically approaching life that way to overcome one struggle at a time and create new solutions and keep growing that way. That's where the real transformation lies.
Yeah, agree. Let me ask you one thing. Do you think that there are people that are meant to find adversity and to overcome, and there are others that they don't? Do you think, so to clarify, do you think that there are some people that are more able to face fears or more willing at some point? It's easier for them. And do you think that biochemistry has anything to do with that?
There's inevitably genetic factors that shape who we are to some degree. Like they say, for example, I've wrestled with addiction many times. To this day, I have a very addictive type personality. That people with battling with addiction often will have their dopamine receptors in their brain will be a little off. So they're more prone to addiction. So we are all ultimately, to some degree, going to be shaped by genetics. That we can't control. But we are not prisoners of those genetics. Anybody can build themselves up into whoever they want to become through hard work and cultivating that mindset of that, if I put in the work, I can become who I want to become. So that's the growth mindset. Dr. Carol Dweck is a leading researcher in peak performance and motivation. She wrote a great book called Mindset, and she talks about the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. The fixed mindset is one that believes talent is ingrained. And again, our culture is very pervasive of this. We hear things like, he was born for this. He's a quote unquote natural. Like that's promoting a fixed mindset idea. The reality is, I don't care who the person is, whoever is a master at their craft, they worked their ass off for it. Even if they might have been born with some genetic gifts or something like that, they worked hard to get to that result, right? So what we need to put more emphasis on is in the effort, and that can be cultivated. Take me, for example. I am not a gifted athlete. I am not genetically gifted. I have flat feet. I have scoliosis. I have a blood disorder that transports less oxygen through my body that 2 doctors told me would kill me in Marine Corps boot camp. I have another condition. I have celiac, so like another condition where apparently the villi in my esophagus are worn out, so my body can't absorb nutrients too well. So none of these things are ideal for any human being, let alone somebody who's an athlete. And yet today I'm a sponsored athlete and I run ultra marathons. I'm by no means the fastest runner in the world. I'm not the best, but I can go, and I can go for long, and I can suffer for long, and that shit was cultivated. That was built up over time. As I said, I wasn't always like this. I was scared of Ferris wheels when I was a kid. I still remember once I was with my family traveling to Australia, and we were snorkeling in the Great Barrier Reef. And I remember snorkeling, and I got to a point where the water, like the reef, it dipped off into nothingness. And seeing the blackness of the ocean, it terrified me, and I immediately turned around. And today I've been cave diving. I've been ice diving. I'm a scuba diver. So the point is, I wasn't always this way. I built myself up into this way. And the thing I cannot stress enough about that is that anybody can do that. It takes a lot of freaking work. Like to this day, I see people sometimes say, I wish I could do what you do. And I'm like, you can if you want to. There's nothing remotely special about me. I'm not some unique genetic gift of God. I'm like a genetic mess, if nothing else. But I work my ass off to get to the results that I want to get.
That's critical. What you say, first of all, about not being gifted and not being the most talented and stuff, because many people always try to find an excuse pointing to a Superman. Like, for example, in my life, there was a time I was fat. So not huge, not obese, but I was overweight, 20 kilos, right? And I was 14 years old. I had no friend. I had one friend, and that was by accident. I think he was forced to be my friend because my father was our teacher. So I was fat, I was ugly in a sense. My haircut was off, everything was off. I wasn't socializing. I wasn't able. I was feeling like a loser. I wanted to take my life out, and I had, of course, no girlfriend, but I had a desire to have a girlfriend, and that's the point. I had a desire, and not only I had a desire. For some reason, I had a desire to get the best girlfriend there. So I aimed for the most beautiful girl in high school when I was 14 to 15 years old. And yes, there was a trigger. So I'm saying all this, and I'll let you talk after that, because I think there is a process in all that madness. There was a trigger. I saw my brother, for example, an inspiration. I saw my brother. I was feeling miserable, blah, blah, blah. I was feeling a loser. And then I saw my brother, who was gifted, and as a body, shape like a model, and he was approached by a beautiful girl. And I was, in a sense, I was inspired, and I was also mad because I wanted also the same attention. I never got because my brother is totally different than me. I'm like you. I'm not gifted. I'm to get 1 pound of muscle. I have to work for 2-3 years, but it's worth it. It's worth the journey. In any case, what I want to say is that I put the work. I was 15 years old. I had no one to teach me. We didn't have any YouTube back in the day. It was like 2003 or something. And no coach, no nothing. And I had a strong desire and a strong trigger. My brother, that experience. And I said, fuck it, fuck it, really. Whether I die or not doesn't matter now. I'm in pain anyways. So why not going for it, And that trigger was so strong, and my desire to go for that girl, she was named Kelly, was also so strong that I really fasted for 3 to 6 months. I ate 1 meal per day. Before that was even fashionable. I didn't know any better. I just ate a small meal every day, and I lost the weight. I lost 20 kilos, and then Kelly didn't like me, but she was a little bit impressed by my losing weight. And then I put up muscle. I said to myself, all right, now I have to be musculature. I have to be strong. Because being thin isn't sexy either. And I faced that fear too. So I worked for something, it didn't succeed, but it didn't matter because I was ready to proceed. I was ready to fight for it. I was ready to embrace the suck even more because I was in the suck. And it wasn't that frightful like I thought it would be. And then I proceeded, I built muscles. It took me another year. So a year and a half totally. And of course, I didn't hook up with Kelly, but I was very close because, we are almost there to do something. So I went from nobody, and I say this story always to my friends and people that know me because it relates. For me, it was a great experience because I faced a super huge fear back in the day. And since then, it's not that I'm facing fears constantly, because if I would do that, I would be in a much better place right now. But it's always an anchor for me, that experience, that early experience, as well as my father. Back in the day when I was 3 years old, he did one thing to help us swim, to help us be swimmers. He took me, and we went a little bit deep in the sea. Couldn't stand on the ground, and he put me in the air. He took me in the air, and he threw me to the sea. I was not 3 years old. I was probably younger, 2 years old. I was like a toddler or something, and I remember myself being in the sea, not being able to swim with no help, the things, and being in a despair. And I remember, I'm drowning. I remember myself saying to myself, I'm drowning, I'm going to die, blah, blah, blah. And I was like 3 years old or something. And I remember myself, my father didn't try to save me. And I remember myself looking up and seeing the light, seeing the light from the deep blue, and seeing the light. And I was expecting my father, to come and get me and to save my ass, but he didn't do that. And I find my way surprisingly up in the surface. And from that point on, I'm not the best swimmer, like you said, you're not the best runner, but I'm like totally cool to go to dive, whatever. And I see, in contrast with me, my cousin, my beloved cousin, his father and his mom didn't do that thing. They did the Indian parent thing. They overprotect. It was laughable. It was like they put him masks. It was laughable and sad. And my father, saw that and tried to help him when he was like 10. Until 10 years old, he couldn't swim without help, and it was weird. Anyways, I talk too much, so I want you to talk a little bit about triggers and about anchors and about how this process works, and if there is a process about facing our fears.
So as far as like facing our fears, sort of the processes, one is to not demonize fear, to accept fear as normal. Because what happens usually is people feel fear and then they think of them as something wrong with them for feeling fear. They think of them as weak. They judge the fear. They think of them as pathetic because quote unquote experts said be fearless, don't be scared, because we demonize fear, stress, anxiety. So when we feel the emotions, we think there's something wrong with us for feeling it. So the first thing is letting go of the judgment around the emotion and accepting the isness of the emotion. And most of what happens in our brain, we don't control anyway. Like, for example, I'm sitting here talking to you. If somebody comes into this room right now with a gun, my brain's going to respond with fear. I'm not choosing to feel fear. That's a response. My brain creates in response to external stimuli. So the first thing is like not judging the emotion and accepting the isness of the emotion. And then you can start working with it and using it. You can dig. So for example, writing a book on fear, I was terrified. I was terrified that people would hate it, people would judge it, somebody might think it's garbage, I might get a 1-star review on Amazon, all that crap, right? So instead, I looked at, why am I scared? What am I scared of? What's the worst case scenario? How can I prepare for that worst case scenario? Because when you engage it, fear propels you to prepare. It propels you to prepare. It's a vehicle to preparation. Like everything I do right now terrifies me. I'm going to Antarctica in November for 2 months, terrifies me. Because of that, I use the fear to prepare. So I was scared of writing a bad book, so I studied from authors who have written great books, like Jack Canfield, Chicken Soup with a Soul author, Tim Ferriss. I studied, okay, and because I was scared of writing a bad book, I wrote a better book. Like my fear drove me. If I didn't have fear, I wouldn't have cared. I would have just put something out there. So you engage the fear. Why am I scared? What's the worst case scenario? How can I, and you literally write this down. What can I do to prepare for it? And then you start doing the thing to prepare for it. Like you take the action. You visualize what's on the other side of that fear. Like for me, I was getting this book out there was a life changer for me and my brand, but more importantly for the lives I could touch and the impact it could make. So that knowing what's on the other side of that fear, using the other side of that fear, meaning the fear of consequences. So I would literally imagine myself dying, never having written my book. And that's terrifying. The fear of the consequence was far more scary to me than the fear of actually putting my book out there. So you're using fear effectively. You're using the fear of consequence of inaction. You know, you're getting clear on that why. And then like you talked about like triggers and anchors, you know, creating triggers to help you move through fear. And you can create triggers can work in all kinds of ways. You can use music, you can use movies, you can have a little totem. So for example, I have this little thing that I carry with me all the time. It's a little samurai sword keychain because it reminds me of the samurai. I have a tattoo of a samurai as well on my arm who committed seppuku. The tattoo says death before dishonor. So the samurais, if there was any sort of things that, you know, dishonor, they would commit seppuku. So death was a constant, ever present in their reality. This was also inspired by these marathon monks. I won't go too deep into their story, but when they do these runs, they carry a sword with them. And if they fail this mission, they have to take their own life. So I stay present to death all the time with this. So these triggers remind me of what's on the other side of if I don't face my fears. I mean, everybody should have something in their life that absolutely terrifies them, because that fear is also fuel for inner fire. It awakens you. Like right now, I'm terrified of the ultra that I'm doing tomorrow. I'm terrified of the Antarctica coming up in less than 3 months. I'm terrified of my business goals. Everything I do scares me. I'm recently single, so I'm terrified of dating again. All of these things absolutely terrify me, and that's what makes me come alive. Like fear and excitement are two sides of the same coin. You know, so fear is just a vehicle for that excitement. It's the precursor to passion. You know, it's the fuel for enthusiasm. So use fear. Like, don't demonize it, access it, chase it, run towards it, not away from it, and use it to find all the gifts, the rewards, the bliss that comes from the other side of fear. I mean, that's the essence of Fearvana, is that fear and nirvana, two seemingly contradictory ideas, are in fact complementary, and that fear is the vehicle to get to nirvana. That's everything I do is a living expression of that, and what I do is now help people do that as well through some of the techniques we talked about, like visualizing the triggers, engaging the fear, you know, and then at the core of it, knowing what's your why, like what's the thing that drives you, and especially when you think about that thing that drives you in the context of something greater than yourself. Neuroscience has actually shown that when you think about your goals in the context of something greater than yourself, it helps release oxytocin in the brain, which is the quote-unquote love hormone. And that hormone, it helps you, it doesn't eliminate the fear, but it helps you move through it. So I'm always thinking about, I have my own self goals, but how can I use that goal to be of service to some others, to use this life that I have been gifted to be of service to my human family? And so thinking about your goals in that context will help you move through your fears as well.
I cannot add anything to that. Having said all that, what do you think about taking life too seriously? And I'm saying this because I've seen from my own experience that whenever there's a fear I have to face, you know, like you said, you know, I'm going to do a YouTube channel, probably. I'm going to, you know, consult people on something that I know. And yet, you know, I always think that I'm an imposter, that I'm going, you know, to fail, I'm going to be laughed at, and rightfully so. That's my thought process, because, you know, when I was younger, I had people criticize me, like, you know, most of us had always people criticize us. My father was sometimes a little bit too strict, if I might add, maybe for the better, because most fathers were soft, but he was a little bit too out of line sometimes, beating us or shouting us without any reason. You know, sometimes that little child, you know, takes charge of me and sees life a little bit too seriously. And this is something that me and my two brothers have always get as a compliment. Everyone that meets us, all of us, the three of us, they say that we look too serious when we are in, you know, some kind of event, of anything. It's true. Our face expressions are probably because of fear, of focus, of discipline. I don't know what, but maybe because of our father. Probably we weren't laughing in our, you know, in our home, and I've seen from my experience with friends and with girlfriends that I've been in households and I've lived in a household of a past girlfriend of mine. And it was totally different, and it was a mind shift for me, because the people there were laughing. Actually, they were making jokes. It was not exactly the perfect family, but they were, you know, hugging each other, poking jokes at each other. No, not all the time, but there was that element. And all of the children were fearless. Not fearless, but they were more able than me and my two brothers. I was seeing that clearly, that they were more able to, face fears, jump from rocks, doing stupid things without, taking, care about other people's opinions. And I'm wondering, and I want your opinion on that. Do you think that we and most people take life too seriously, and that hinders our efforts to get better and face our fears?
I think it's a combination of the duality. And what I mean by that is, like, certain things, for example, I do things that I need to take seriously or they could kill me. Like going to Antarctica, if I don't take the approaching it with the level of seriousness is necessary in order to come back alive from these things. But I can bring play and lightness to that seriousness, if that makes sense. So it's about the duality. I think if you take life too seriously all the time, that's not healthy and you're going to be miserable. But if you're never take things seriously enough, you're probably not going to move forward into your goals either. By taking it seriously, it can give you some fuel, some purpose it can give you the desire for greatness, So it's not one or the other. I think it's a combination of playing in the duality. Like, I am very playful. I laugh at I laugh at the stupidest jokes. I like slapstick comedy, like Will Ferrell, like South Park. I like the lighted comedy. I remember talking to my friend about this the other day. We were, I think, in college, or like we would post after this. Like, we were still like, we were maybe 20 years old and laughing at like quote unquote fart jokes. And I remember once somebody was saying, like, kind of commenting that that's immature. And I was like, maybe so, but at least I'm laughing. You know what I mean? Maybe to you it's quote unquote immature, but at least I am laughing and I'm having fun in the experience of life. And I've had plenty of life experiences, so by no means am I quote unquote immature. I'm able to laugh and have fun at the lightness of life, but I also take it seriously when it needs to be. To your point about looking intense, dude, I get that all the time. People are like, dude, you look like, my friends have sometimes joked that I have resting death stare face. Like one time they threw a surprise party for me and they showed me the video of what my face looked like when the surprise party. I looked, because I was genuinely surprised, I looked like I wanted to kill everybody in the room. And I didn't. Like, that was just, my face looked super intense. And they showed me the video. I'm like, Jesus. I was like, listen, I'm sorry, y'all. I didn't mean to look like I want to kill you all. So I have an intensity to me because I do things that are intense. But I also have a playfulness and a lightness to me because that's how I kind of move through the intensity. So it's coming back to the point earlier of what I said, that pain, pleasure, darkness, light, life, death, all these things, they're not opposites. So taking it seriously and being playful, it doesn't have to be one or the other. You can combine the two, and the true spiritual awakening, the true mastery is actually playing in the realm of uniting all edges as one. Seeing light where there is darkness. And I viscerally experienced that. I did the 7-day darkness retreat where I spent 7 days in pitch darkness, silence, and isolation. And like, the brightest white light I've ever seen in my entire life was when I was in a dark room. And it viscerally showed me how dualities can coexist as one. So to answer that question, that I think it's both. I think if you're too playful, start practicing with taking life more seriously, and then you'll find where on the edge you lie. And if you're taking it too seriously, start being more playful, and then you might find, like, I'll always be someone who's probably in that, let's look at the context of suffering and play, like suffering and lightness. I'll always be someone who seeks suffering. But I'm also playful, and I was able to bring playful into my suffering simply by playing on both edges. So I think it's a combination of the two. And if you find yourself, in your case, like taking life too seriously, learn to laugh more, learn to play more, and also just viewing life as a game, viewing it as an experiment. Like, everything I do, I view it as an experiment. I'm always experimenting. Okay, let me try this experiment. If it works, cool. If it doesn't, cool. I'll learn from it and I'll move on. So when you view life as a game, when you kind of gamify it, when you view it as an experiment, it makes it also that much more likely to be successful, because you're going to much more likely to actually keep doing the thing that you need to do. And it just makes the game less heavy, and that therefore more likely that you're going to take action towards it.
Agree. I totally agree about the game stuff. I mean, that's how I proceeded with my flirting game with ladies. It's the only way I really achieved something at that point. I'm not the best, I'm not Casanova, but the only way I upgraded my game at that, it was like, seeing that it's literally as a board game, as a video game, making fun of myself, but not the derogatory sense, laughing it off. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah, life sucks. Yeah, but if you say this with a smile, you can, go through it a little bit easier.
Exactly.
So a last question, because slowly but surely we have to end this beautiful chat. My audience now, Akshay, like I told you, is men in their 30s, possibly 40s. Let's take a man of that group. He has children, a couple of them probably, or one. He has a lot of things with his job, so he's stressed out because because of all that, all these regulations and all this uncertainty that we have in our modern era after 2020. But and he sees himself in the mirror, and what he sees is basically scoliosis, lordosis, belly fat, black eyes, black below the eyes, hair loss. He sees a lot of things that are not going well, but he doesn't feel like taking responsibility. And he's one of the men that he knows that he has to, but for some reason he can't find the way to solve this puzzle, to dive into, to take the first step and say, fuck it. Like I said when I was 14, 15, fuck this. And like I say time and time again, when I started this YouTube channel, and like you said when you saw Black Hawk Down and other things in your life, you say, fuck it. I mean, shit, I have to do this. What is your advice as a first step for a man in the city, all right? That he's in his 30s and 40s, and he wants to be strong, he wants to be to be viral again, and to feel great, to feel brave. What are a few steps that he might take to start facing these fears?
Yeah. So in addition to everything else I've kind of talked about already, about like kind of falling in love with the process, and that comes with practice, is that a lot of personal development today, it spends too much time on the thinking. Like, you will read all these articles, you'll go to friggin' seminars for 5 days and sit there, journal. Like, I'm not saying the inner work is not important, but like fuck trying to overcome your limiting beliefs. Forget about all that nonsense about overcome your limiting beliefs. You'll hear that shit all the time. How you overcome your limiting beliefs is by actually proving to yourself that you're capable of doing it. And so what I mean by that is we got to all be like a little bit more of a bull in a china shop. Like, fucking run headfirst into shit, smash your head against shit, break shit, crash, you'll cut yourself, you'll burn yourself, you'll hurt yourself, you'll fail, but you're going to learn more in that process than you ever will by standing still. Like, look, you can hear me on a podcast, you can read a book, you can do all of that shit. And we've gotten so addicted to that. We feel like because I'm going to another seminar or reading another book or listening to another podcast, I'm growing. That shit means nothing. Like, reading a book a week means nothing if you don't apply it. I'd rather you read one book a fucking year and apply that shit than read 52 books a year and apply 0 of them. So the point is, you got to be, whoever's in that role, the example you got me, you showed me, is you got to have a little bit more of that fuck it attitude. Like, just jump into some shit, fuck up, fail, so be it. Like, don't, so many people, like, I'll go to the gym. Okay, what's the right way to work out? Like, I've had people ask me, okay, I'm starting off running. What's the right way to train for a marathon? I'm like, if you're just starting off, stop giving a shit about the right way. Just go out the fucking door and run. Like, the little details matter the closer you become towards mastery at whatever your craft is. So for me now at running, like, the little details matter. But when I first started, I just needed to go do something. Get in the fucking gym. Do whatever. You having that is a huge, like, the mindset of just being like a bull in a china shop and just charging headfirst into crap and falling, breaking a million things on the way, because you're going to learn more. The pursuit, the greatest lessons are in the doing, so kind of having that mindset, it's really, really valuable to also have accountability. So get a friend and have accountability. Every day I'm going to check in with you. Here's what I'm going to do. I do daily accountability with my team in Fearvana. I have an accountability buddy that I speak with, 2 accountability buddies. We speak every week and we report in. What did we say we're going to get done last week? What are we going to get done next week? And if every week or every day you're showing up to your accountability buddy that, hey, I didn't get this done, you're going to start feeling like a piece of shit to the point that you finally get it done. So using accountability and then kind of having that bull in a china shop mentality. And then once you do, like, don't wait for clarity to take action. Don't wait to feel ready to take action. Don't wait to know your purpose, quote unquote, to take action. All that shit will come when you take action. So charge headfirst into things. And then you'll say, oh, yeah, you know what? I'm figuring out. We talked about viewing life as a game. This is not for me. This is for me. I'll view this. Okay, great. Now that I've charged headfirst into XYZ, I've figured out this is my path, and now I get some clarity. Once you have clarity becomes power. It gives you a sense of what the goals are. So initially just jump, and then you'll start developing clarity on developing your goals, your purpose, your mission, what you're here for, what you need to, like, who you are, what you want to be. And then with that clarity, now you can continue to fuel that action. Look, nothing I say or anybody here, reading a book or listening to podcasts is not going to make your fear and your stress go away. The only way is to channel it into purposeful action. You are going to have to suffer. You're going to have to struggle. Nothing is going to make that go away. Like I did one interview where somebody asked me, they gave me a specific scenario. They said, what if somebody's going through a divorce? How would you help them with that? And I said, look, it doesn't matter what the scenario you give me. You give me any scenario. The fundamental problem is that most people are looking for the quickest, easiest, least painful way out of that problem. That's the problem, regardless of the scenario. Instead of doing that, say, great, this is the problem. I'm going to fall in love with the battle it takes to transcend that problem instead of looking for the quickest, easiest way. Like I have a run coming up tomorrow. I'm not hoping for it to be easy. I'm praying for the fucking devil to come try to break my soul. Like I want it to rain down hellfire upon me. I want as much pain as the fucking world can throw at me tomorrow. I don't want it to be remotely easy. And because I'm praying for as much pain as fucking possible, I'm going to find so much power within me to transcend that pain. So don't wish for it to be easy. Wish for you to get stronger to face for the fucking battle, the hardship, the struggle. That's where the beauty in life lies.
Damn. My testosterone was upgraded in a snapshot. Thank you.
Absolutely, brother.
We need you probably, all of mankind. So, having said that, yeah, man. I mean, so having said all that, where can people find you?
You can find the book Fearvana. It's Fearvana on Amazon in paperback, Kindle, and Audible. And all the profits go to charity, so we support many beautiful causes. And then you can find me on Instagram at Fearvana, and my website is fearvana.com. And anything I can do to help, here to help.
Right, I'll link down below in the description everything you said. And thanks for coming on. I mean, your energy is really something. And your passion, whenever I see a person, human being like you, facing his fears or being in the top of his game, I have a new friend right now here in Greece, for example, who he's a world champion in kettlebells, and I've seen the same passion and the same fire that you have. And I'm relating right now as we are talking, I'm making, connections in my brain, like, whoa, yeah, that makes sense. These people are so because of so. And yeah, thanks, Akshay, for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I know that you are going to kick ass tomorrow, and let me know how that went.
Will do, bro.
All right. So,
All right, man.
cheers,
Appreciate
man.
you. Cheers.
Yeah.